Hi, I'm Denis Jaskowiak and I'm working for Qlik as a Senior Solution Architect. Thank you for watching the video. Today I'd like to show you the Advanced KPI project. It's a visualization extension for Qlik Sense, which is available on developers.qlik.com, and through developers.qlik.com it's linked to GitHub, as you can see here on my screen. Before I start with a demo of the solution, I would like to give you some baseline information about the target of this extension. It should fit to 90% of the requirements for all KPI objects and requirements that you have, but not being technical at that point. It should also be very easy to use. In addition to that, Advanced KPI approaches the topic from a more information design perspective, which is more use case oriented. If you'd like to download the extension, you could do this under releases. So if you go here under releases and click on that, you could download the extension and could import it into Qlik Sense. But also you could download with that button here the Qlik Sense application that we use to demo the extension to get some kind of inspiration. So let's see how the extension is working. Now we're in the demo application of the Advanced KPI object, and on the first worksheet you see different visualizations that are built with the Advanced KPI object. So from the left side, I think it's pretty easy. You see that we have a title and we have a particular measure. And if we go more to the right side, you see that we add a couple of information configurations here. So for example, here we added a trend, and of course here we added the orientation and also the color coding. If we go down the line, you see that it's also possible to add different kind of backgrounds. So for example, a single color, or a color gradient defined by CSS, or for example a background picture that is also imported by Qlik Sense and configured through CSS to have the best positioning. On the last line you see that it's also possible to add mini charts to give more information about the history of a KPI. This also follows current best practices related information design when it comes to KPI objects. The concept of the KPI object is always that you want to give information about a main KPI. In this case, this is total sales. This means that you just want to talk about this particular KPI. It is also possible, if we go one click to the right, so if we change the sheet, to give more information about the total sales. So for example, what is the delta to the previous year? Or what is the delta to the previous year in percent? Or what is the delta in a month-over-month view? But from an information design perspective, it is important to not give any kind of information about a different KPI. These information need to stick to your top level KPI and need to describe it in more detail to indicate to your stakeholders and to your decision makers that this KPI is performing or is not performing, and that they maybe have to do something or not. On the second chart you see that we have a couple of other possibilities that we could configure into the object. So here you see that we just have add a couple of, I call them describing KPIs. There are also different possibilities to configure them. And on the bottom line you see that it's also possible, while using the describing KPIs, to add different styles and different visualization, and also for example reference lines to this object, to give you a pretty good indication about the KPI itself and to describe it in a very good way, and of course to indicate if the KPI is performing or not. Now let's start to build our own Advanced KPI object. To do so, I choose and pick the Advanced KPI object from our extension menu, drag and drop them to the canvas, open them up here, and now on the right hand side we could choose from a variety of possibilities. In this case you see that we have the possibility to choose from measures. So there we have the top level measure. If I click on that, you see that from the top level measure I could enable a formula or type in a formula. I will do so. For this specific KPI object, we like to have a look on cost of sales. This is the formula for cost of sales. I apply that. And of course, I could apply a title. When we got that, you see that we see the title and also the formula and the measure on the canvas. Now you see different submenus that we have. Of course, we could now align it to the left or center or right. So this is what we could choose from. Now I like to configure the measure and the title settings. The measure setting is the setting that configures the number itself. So if, for example, I like to have a different font, or I like to have a different size, I could just choose this from here. Also, if I like to have it bold, italic, underlined, or a different color. Let's choose this also for the title setting. Let's pick here Arial as well. Let's make the font a little bit smaller, and maybe let's give it a different color. So for example, a lighter gray. So this is what we could do here. In addition to that, the next menu gives us the possibility to pick a trend. So the trend, if I enable that option, you see that the trend is showing the arrow up. You see that if I click on that one here, these are the different Louis icons, so the Leonardo UI icons you could choose from. So let's click on that. I have an example formula that I like to use. I type that in here. So this is an if expression. The if expression is looking on the KPI if it's different to the year before, and then we're choosing aligned to that or related to that if what icon we use. Let's apply that. You see the icon is appearing. Now we have the arrow up, and we could do the same exactly with also the color. So if we want to have a dynamic color indication, we could also choose it from here. So now you see that the color is green. And of course we could pick the site and also the size of the icon. There are a couple of other options. So for example, if you like to have a link to a different sheet, so the sheet navigation that you could configure here, but that's it. Let's choose from a variety of backgrounds. So if you go to appearance, you see that we have the background option. And the first thing with the background option is that we could choose a normal color. So if I enable that, I get a color picker and I could say, okay, I want to have it maybe yellow. But in addition to that, if I want to be more specific in what I get, I could also switch to CSS definition of the background. If I click on that, I could define a CSS gradient, for example. Let's just open the expression editor. Let's type in, or let's bring in our formula, which is defining a CSS gradient. Let's apply that. Now you see that the CSS setting overrides the standard color, and we get our CSS gradient now here. If I like to be more specific in that, and I like, for example, to use a picture, I could enable the picture mode. I could pick a picture from a variety of pictures that I have here. So for example, that one, I insert that, and now you get the picture. And to configure this a little bit better for the positioning, I could go to the CSS definition. Now we have the background size set to cover, background position to bottom, and we have set up on opacity. So you have also the possibility here to define CSS. Let's go to apply, and as you see, the CSS settings are now applied in addition to my chosen picture. So I think that's okay for now for the background picture. I would love to bring in a couple of new measures, so the so-named describing measures. To do so, I go to measures. We just close the dialogues here, and we go to, for example, left. And for the left measure, I want to bring in a different KPI. So this is now the KPI to have the delta to the previous year in percentage, as you see here. And I like to give it also a name. So let's define the measure title, and I like to align this to the left side. I've now set up also the other two measures in exactly the same way. So let's add the horizontal ruler also to the visualization or to the KPI. Let's go to appearance. Let's go to horizontal line. and then we could enable that option, and we could choose from a variety of styles. There will be more in the future. Currently we go with style 3 because I like the style very much. And the next step is what I like to bring into that KPI object is a mini chart. To do so, I like to reuse my master items. So let's go to master items. As you see, we have a dimension. It's called period. I just bring it in there. And of course, I want to also bring in a couple of measures. So the cost of sales for the current year and also the cost of sales for the previous year. Just drag and drop them onto my visualization. Add to cost of sales. And now you see that we get the bar chart on the bottom. So if we like to configure this a little bit more specific, we could go to the menu called minichart. There we have everything in that we like to configure. I like to make this now a little bit bigger to have more space to define it. As you see, we could first start with, do we want to get a line chart or a bar chart? So I would start with, let me say, a line chart, and then it directly changes to the line chart. We could bring in the grid. We could also choose from a variety of colors. So I want to have it gray, and the other one I want to have, I think blue is okay. We could choose the chart opacity. So if we want to have a little bit more or lighter, we could define the point size. So if we want to display points on the different data, and we could choose a scale, for example. So the scale gives us a little bit more control about the look and feel of the object. And if we like, we could add a reference line. And the last thing is that we got here is bring in the full screen mode. The full screen mode gives you the possibility to put the visualization into 100% of the background and to align the KPI more in the middle. For now, I think this is good to use with the bar chart. That looks a little bit better, and of course in that way you need to put the chart opacity a little bit back. But now I want to stick with the line chart, and I want to disable the full screen mode. And as you see, also we want to have a little bit, we want to change a little bit the scaling, and that's it. So let's go to done. As you see, we have created our KPI object now. The KPI object is now working and is indicating the top level KPI to me, also describing this with a couple of additional information, and gives me information about the trend. I think you get a good overview about what is possible with the advanced KPI chart. Currently there are more than 100 configuration parameters where you could choose from, so you have 10,000s of different possibilities to create your specific KPI chart. With this, I would like to say thank you, have fun with the KPI object, and take care. See you next time.